Hi, writers. Dr. Carl here again, and as promised, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the next draft you have to do and a few comments about your latest drafts. I hope you've all looked at my comments on your drafts. Just keep in mind that you're gonna have to download the document onto your computer, because if you just open it up in your email or open it up in Blackboard, it might not show the comments. So, if you have any questions about my comments, just email me. Let's see, so you have to go back to the assignment sheet. Let me just back up a little bit. You have to go back to the assignment sheet and go to the document that you submitted, and when you open that up, you should see my comments. Okay? So, some general comments about this sort of general things that I noticed that a lot of you were doing. The first thing you need to watch out for, okay, the dog is trying to eat my cheese. Go on, Luke. Go on. Okay, sorry. You want to, as always, and this is a hard thing to remember, because you're used to, maybe a lot of the writing you've done before in essays, you're used to using my and I, because a lot of times it's your opinion or your ideas about something. But with a social science essay, your ideas are really immaterial. And for this particular paper, all you're doing is summarizing what the other studies say, comparing the three studies. You have to have a minimum of three, and then talking about how that research is significant. No, talking about how this relates to your life or other people's lives. That stuff, it's not that stuff isn't interesting. It's just that that's not how you do this kind of paper. With that in mind, it might make it easier for you to remember not to use I, me, my, or even you. So no second person, no first person. All right. Make sure that you've looked at that APA style guide, because some of you are not using the correct format when you cite the articles in the text of the paper. It's super easy to do in APA style. All you need is the last name of the author or authors, just the last name, not the first and last name, and then the year of publication in parentheses. Okay? Super easy. A lot easier than MLA, where you have to put all the stuff, all the title and all that. You may use the title just to give the reader a little bit of an idea about what the study's about, but you really don't need to. But make sure that it's clear also that every time you make a comment, a statement about some finding, make it clear that this is what the study found out, not something that you're speculating or opining on. Okay? Also, if you quote directly from a source, you don't have to do that, but anytime you quote directly from a source in APA style, you do have to put the page number. Now, sometimes you've gotten most of these sources off the internet, so or they're an online source. Sometimes they don't have page numbers. If they don't, you just count the paragraphs and use the paragraph number. That's all explained on that style sheet, which is very brief. There are other sources online if you need something more specific. Go ahead and do that. You can always use that citation machine or some of those other citation generation machines for the reference piece, but make sure that you track the format, because sometimes they don't quite do it right, strangely enough. For example, on the references section, first of all, you need an actual subhead that says references, and it should be on the left-hand side. And then you put the sources in the order in which you use them. And I think, is that right? It's alphabetical order. See, I forget these things. I have to look them up myself. And the paragraph should be a hanging paragraph. So again, that's all on the APA style sheet. So do check on that once you're revising and getting everything to look perfect. Okay, to help you out, first to just make sure I clarify some of the things that a lot of people are having trouble with, but also to give you another homework grade because you know how much homework counts in this class. I have posted onto Blackboard an expression exercise, and it's very short. It will not take you that long. What I did is I took some examples from 3 students who'd done a very good job on whatever it was I was trying to point out. But since this is a draft, everyone's going to make a few little errors. And so I used those ones and pointed out just a few errors within a paragraph or paragraphs that were essentially spot on. Okay? So the things that you're going to look for, first of all, you want to just clarify every little thing. Make sure that the writing is very straightforward, very clear. You're not expected to be creative. You're just supposed to be expected to be clear. And that can be really hard to do, especially when you're struggling to understand the concept yourselves. So, this is really an exercise not in creating ideas, but in reporting someone else's ideas clearly. So it's all about the writing, really. So you'll have an exercise in trying to figure out what the writer needs to clarify in a paragraph. The next one is some basic writing errors. One, it has to do with punctuation, and one is just an often misused word. They use one word that a lot of people use. This is a word we've talked about a lot in class, and they should be using another word. So that's all the clues I'll give you. And then the last question has to do with citation and in the text of the paper. So it's known as in-text citation. Pretty original, huh? One of my students, Ash, I think it was, said, okay, I don't really understand what I'm supposed to cite in the text. She says, do I cite it in the abstract or in the introduction? Okay, here's the rule. Anytime you mention a study, especially the first time you mention a study, give the last name of the author and then the year. In subsequent references, after that first time, you can just refer to the authors by last name. All right. So every time. So if it's in the abstract, if it's in the introduction, if it's in the conclusion, and actually the conclusion in these kind of papers is known as the discussion. Okay. Always give that information so it's clear that this is coming from the researchers, not from you. Let me see here. Discussion section. Sometimes I've said conclusion, and that's confusing, so that's my fault. So the last section you have after the body, and the body should just be a summary of all the studies that you look at and compare between them. As you transition from one study to another, talk about how they're different or similar. So in the discussion, you're going to talk about how this information taken together, or maybe even separate studies if you can't really make generalizations about how this information is valuable or significant to the study of whatever your topic is. Okay, what good, useful information has come of these studies? So remember, I asked you to look at the newest ones you could find, so you'd get the most up-to-date in this area. Then you're going to want to talk about what flaws are in the study. So a flaw in a study could be a small sample size, or a very strict demographic in a sample size. Maybe they only looked at 20 to 25-year-old white women or something, and so how can they make generalizations about something based only on that? And maybe there isn't a difference, but they didn't look, okay? Or maybe they only studied 15 people. So a study that is over, 2 months. So a study that studied 1,500 people over the course of 5 years, clearly that's going to have a little bit more weight. So a flaw in the study might be something studied for a very short time, if you think that's relevant, or a small sample size, or a skewed demographic, whatever you think, okay? Then, leading on from that, you're going to suggest future studies that would either expand on that knowledge that has been, the current knowledge, or would fix the flaws in the studies that you looked at. So you've got some things to talk about. You could, however, do all of that in one paragraph. What you don't want to do in this discussion section is do more summarizing of the 3 studies, okay? You can talk about them individually if you're talking about how each one is significant, but you don't want to do any summarizing. All of that summarizing goes in the body of the paper. So, let's see if there's anything else that I can think of. The only other thing I can think of now, the abstract. Ash Watkins asked me about the abstract. The abstract is just a summary of the entire paper. And it's counterintuitive, I think, if you're used to writing essays where you leave your grand conclusion to the end. So essentially, you're giving away the entire paper. So one way to think about it is, I'm going to summarize in one sentence the first study, in one sentence the second study, in one sentence the third study, or maybe all 3 in one sentence. And then I'm going to summarize, just summarize the results of each one. And then I'm going to summarize my discussion. Okay, so it could be from anywhere from 3 to 6 sentences, and short is fine. You can look for examples. All of the studies that you look at will have their own abstract, so you can look at the abstract for an example. Let's see now. So the only parts of your paper that should have actual subheads are the abstract, so you'll have the word abstract there, and that should be on the left side of the paper. And then you don't have a separate heading for introduction or study 1, study 2. Okay, it's just abstract. Move down, start your paper without any introductions, and then you are going to, or without any subheads, and then you will have a subhead that says discussion, and then you'll have a subhead that says references. Okay, not works cited. Works cited is only for MLA style, but references. And you don't have to have a separate page for references. It just goes right after you end your discussion, and you start in, if you have room on that page, start in on the reference section. So, that gives you, if you have a long reference section, that gives you extra space, because this, to get to I think it's 4 pages you have to get to. Be sure before you turn in any drafts, and certainly before you turn in your final paper, you read the assignment sheet again and just make sure you check off that you have all the stuff. Really, pretty much all this information is on the assignment sheet or on that APA style sheet. And if I haven't covered any of this, or you have questions, send me an email, and I'll see what I can do to help you out. All right. So that the next draft, which is the full draft with everything, and it can still be in, it's not going to, I'm not expecting it to be perfect, but it should have all the elements. And that's due on Tuesday, the 31st, March 31st, tomorrow, at 11:59 p.m. So I look forward to seeing those. All right. Bye.